The Jaguar XJ-S, a car that was thought to replace the E-Type, the big cat, a car that divides opinion. But this one is a bit special because it's a manual V12 convertible. The XJ-S was Jaguar's idea of a replacement to the E-Type, but this baffled many when it was revealed. The E-Type on one hand was the iconic British sports car of the swinging 60s and had rivaled Aston Martin and Ferraris of the era on its looks alone. The XJ-S, on the other hand, was a complete style departure and was clearly more of a grand tourer than a sports car. It seemed to lack the style and finesse of the E-Type, but Jaguar needed something new, and this bolder, brasher approach would become one of their longest running vehicles. And despite the early criticisms of the way it looked, the Jaguar XJ-S was a huge success, remained in production for 21 years. Let's face it, they're no E-Type, but they do now look pretty tasty, and appreciation for these is building, particularly if you find one like this V12 manual. Now this is a late 80s car, 1988, and for the first sort of part of the XJ-S lifetime you could only get it in coupe version, so this was pretty early convertible here. And what's quite cool about this one also is that it's got the US spec headlights. Usually you've got the outline here and it's all covered across there, but these have the 4 headlights, which of course is what they all had in America. Another thing that always strikes me as quite interesting is how small the gap here is to feed air into the radiator to this big V12 engine. You'd think that it needs a lot more air, but actually I think quite a lot of air was pushed underneath the car, and you can see down here this lovely chin spoiler, and then above that, I don't know whether you can actually see up there, but then there's some venting in there. So actually it's quite clever design this. So you've got this really sort of narrow aperture at the front, and then all of the sort of air intake comes through there. Clever. Modern Jaguars now have much more colourful badging at the front, but on the bonnet of this one you get this rather lovely muted medallion of the big cat, and I just think that is lovely. It's very, very tasteful and subtle. And of course one of the central features of this car is its colossal bonnet. I mean, it is really very long, and of course the bonnet on the E-Type was very long, and it's sort of inherited that, but you understand why, because it's got to fit this massive engine block in there. We'll have a look at that in a minute, but you'll see they really did use every last bit of space. Now when you get round the side of the car and see the side profile, because you've got this convertible hood, actually the lines of the car are quite different. On the coupe you had these big buttresses which kind of arched round, and you had this recessed rear windscreen, but on this it's slightly different, and actually I think as a result you get this much smoother, sleeker look to the car. And with the roof down, this is one very slick banana. Other things to note on the exterior is the chrome. It's absolutely everywhere. We've got it on the bumpers, the wing mirrors, the windscreen surrounds, then of course round the windows, the door handles. It's absolutely everywhere and just adds that little touch of class to the XJ-S. The paintwork is this dark burgundy. Jaguar actually call this colour Bordeaux red, and it's a very sort of rich, deep colour which works very well, particularly with this roof as well. Originally black, but has been replaced with this lovely red convertible roof. So already it feels more of a luxury coupe grand tourer than sports car, but these 16-inch alloy wheels do help with the sporty credentials. The car is actually based on the shortened XJ6 platform, but shortened nonetheless still makes the XJ-S a very long car. Around the back of the car, and for a convertible of this age, 1988, you might have expected to have seen a plastic rear windshield there, and actually this one's glass, which is absolutely fantastic because when these cars get a bit older they can get all quite sort of milky and you have to have them refitted, but this being glass, it makes such a difference. It not only looks better, but actually when you're looking from the driver's seat out the rear view mirror, it's nice and clear. The boot, as you'd expect on a Jag, is absolutely massive, full of our kit in there today, but you can fit so much in there. It's a very deep boot. And to close it, just take it down there and give it a soft close. If you're not familiar with this particular model, then you can be left in no doubt what it is, because you've got this lovely Jaguar lettering here at the back, and then the model XJ-S and V12. twin pipes at the back, no need for anything bigger or louder or shoutier. This is very much sophisticated, just very subtly placed in each corner. More chrome on the fuel filler cap as we come around this side of the car. And let's have a look underneath the engine, because that really is quite something. There's just a little catch on the inside here. There we go. And then that reveals the V12. First impressions, it looks like a bit of a hot mess because there are all these pipes and wires everywhere. As I said earlier, they really did have to sort of use every inch of the space here. Underneath the bonnet, you're presented with a labyrinth of wires and tubes, more reminiscent of a power station than a pedigree powertrain. But underneath the maze sits a fabulous 5.3 litre V12, giving close to 300 horsepower and a 0 to 62 time of about 7 seconds. And by 1989, you could also get yourself an XJ-S with a 6 litre engine and 333 horsepower, made in conjunction with Tom Wilkinshaw's TWR group. Right, the interior of the XJ-S then. Well, I've always thought of interiors of Jags as sort of very old men sort of in their retirement smoking away with their golf clubs in the back, and that may have been the case back in the 70s and 80s, but I think the sort of XJ-S owner now is changing somewhat. However, we can still have appreciation for its interior because the seats that you climb into are very, very comfortable and supportive. Actually, there's good lumbar support on the sides here, but you do sink down into the base of the seat. And again, the car is very low, so you've got this very low seating position. I'm not actually sure how many ways you can move these seats. Certainly you can move the back forwards and backwards, and this will go forward and back too. But nonetheless, very comfortable seats, and then you have this fabulous view over the front bonnet. The steering wheel greets you with obviously the big cat in the centre of it. It's actually quite a large, thick, chunky steering wheel. Would you expect anything less than a real man's Jag? The instrument gauges in front of you, typically analog for the time, very simple speedometer and rev counter to the right, and then in the centre we've got water, oil, petrol and battery charge, and they've got this sort of fruit machine style layout to them. Below that we've got our ignition and our lights down there. We can set the speed of the cruise control on the left stalk. On the right we have our washers, windscreen wipers, etc. The rest of the switchgear looks pretty dated in the centre console. We've got an updated Sony stereo system in the middle with cassette tape, and then of course the 5-speed manual transmission, which was converted in 2004. This was originally an auto. Pretty much all the V12s were automatics, and then a few have been converted, and this is a very rare thing to have because we've got manual transmission, convertible hood, which by the way is in very nice condition. This one, it's all looking very, very smart, as smart as it does from the outside as it is on the inside. The center console on this one's actually been refurbed, so it's very smart, no sticky plastic or anything like that. We've got a cigarette lighter here and these really cool chrome detailed ashtrays. I love these because back when I used to smoke, this would have been quite nice to pop a cigarette in there and rest that easily. Not like these piddly little ashtrays. These are actually enough to put the cigarette long ways. Anyway, don't smoke anymore, not bothered, but cool nonetheless. They haven't overdone it with walnut dash in here. There's obviously a little bit of wood or walnut on the doors and on the dashboard area here, and then lots of chrome detail. And I think when you put it all together, what Jaguar were trying to do at the time was sort of elevate this car from being a sports car to slightly more luxurious Grand Tourer, and you certainly get that impression when you sit here in the cabin. So let's move the seat forward, take it out of gear, start her up and see how she performs out on the road. Let's just pop the window up there. These electric windows, they move so nicely. Quite often windows are just a kind of an up and down, but these sort of move sort of almost like a wave into position. The XJ-S is really a grand tourer, and when you have it in the auto version, I imagine it's a very, very sort of relaxing, wafting continent cruiser. But this being the manual does feel a little sportier actually. And of course, you sit in such a low position, looking out over that enormous long bonnet that houses the V12 engine. At low speeds, it's pretty quiet and fairly well insulated, but once you get going a bit more, there is a little bit more wind noise, and actually you might hear a little bit more just because I've got the window slightly down to fit the GoPro on the left-hand side there. But otherwise, it's a very well sort of comfy and relatively quiet cabin. And the visibility is good too, actually. You've got this massive wide windscreen at the front, a clear view at the back because you haven't got the plastic, you've actually got glass, which is a big thumbs up for anyone with a convertible. The steering's pretty light, which is excellent. You do settle into the XJ-S quite quickly and find yourself resting your arm here on the center console and sort of lazily pointing it around the roads. But then when you want to speed up, God, it's got some good get up and go to it. And that, I think, is what's so nice about having this manual conversion. You can cruise around, it's pretty torquey, so you get all the benefits of being in the auto because you can stick yourself in fourth gear and waft around if you want, or you can drop down a couple of gears and let it do its magic. Does sound good. There's just something about the looks of these which just, I think, looks so cool right now. I mean, every decade has its classics, but the 80s in particular was a time of largesse and success and excess. And I think a Jag, a V12 Jag, epitomizes that really very nicely. The cabin is actually, when you're driving, very well thought out because everything's just in a little arm stretch away. Of course, in the convertible you don't have the rear seats, but let's face it, those weren't really fitting anyone. I remember being crammed in the back of one when I was about 8 years old, and that was a bit of a squeeze. But in this one you get a nice parcel tray, a little cabin underneath for any bits and pieces that you want to put in there, but that's probably going to be used for your golf clubs, or you can use that enormous boot behind you for everything else that you need. All we need now is the sun's come out, get this roof down and enjoy some open top motoring. Right, I've just pulled over into this pub car park and I'm going to see what it's like with the roof down. Operating the roof is quite simple actually. You just got these little buttons aside here and you release the catch either side. So there's one this side as well, you can release that one there, and then you just press the button and the roof comes back. Oh, that is much better. Hood down, countryside, and the big cat purring away. Oh yes, she moves along very nicely. Best to think of the XJ-S as a stately home in its joggers. Sporty intentions, but comfort at heart. And it's as much as home here out in the countryside as it is cruising down the motorway. It sits very comfortably at motorway speeds. And then you can park it outside the pub or Casino Square and it just fits in. Oh, that's lovely. I've got an XK150 just sat behind me there. Two very classic cars. I have to say, for a late 80s or 90s collectible car, this is pretty hard to beat. I think I'd be looking at something like this, or perhaps an SL500, but this certainly feels much more unique. And in this guy's manual V12, it's a very, very cool proposition. See this? Elbow on the sill here. It's been driving a Jag. If you find a well-sorted one of these, you'll have lots of fun. It's a lovely car. Originally I thought I'd probably favour the coupe, but having spent the afternoon driving around in this, I'm not so sure now actually. What do you think? Convertible, manual, V12, or a coupe? Not a bad decision to have to make, is it? So it may be the underdog when compared to such classics as the XK-SS and the E-Type, but today the XJ-S stands up as its own right as a classic and stands out as one to watch. This one is now listed on collectingcars.com with a full listing and plenty of photos. For more videos like this, please remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you soon.